Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Fund It Fast Chats. I am Rochelle Butler with the SJV CEO. I'm excited to be back with you to continue our discussion on EV procurement. There was so much interest and so much post-recording engagement and activity for the last episode on EV procurement that we did back in May. We decided to go ahead and do a part two. So to have this discussion, I have invited back Vice President of Clean Mobility, Energy, and Sustainability with Answer Advisory, Steve Clarke. Welcome back to the Fund It Fast Chat, Steve.
Hi, thanks. It's good to be back.
We had so much fun working with you and recording with you last time around. We're really happy that you were able to join us again for this website.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Steve, for this discussion, we want to focus on one of the options that our public sector partners may have may have not been utilizing, or they may not even really be that familiar with it. Can you kind of walk us through what is as a service offering as it pertains to EV charging?
Sure. Yeah. As a service offering really is designed to alleviate the upfront costs associated with conversion to electric vehicles. And those three main costs are namely infrastructure, vehicles themselves, and the electricity used to power those vehicles. Rochelle, if you can pull up that graphic, I made a quick chart that summarizes this nicely.
There you go.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, so the three flavors that we'll talk about today are charging as a service. That's where a third party installs, owns, and maintains the EV charging infrastructure. And that public entity who's entered into that as a service agreement pays back that third party over time. Expanding that out a little bit more, there's offerings called fleet as a service, where a third party installs, owns, and maintains not only the EV charging infrastructure, but the vehicles, the fleet vehicles that are associated with that deal. And, again, payments are made over time through the course of the agreement to cover the cost. And then the last flavor really wraps in the energy that's associated with operating a fleet. So charging infrastructure gets put in, the vehicles are procured, and the energy is all wrapped into that service. Now, there's a little caveat with energy as a service. Sometimes it doesn't include the vehicles. Sometimes it's just charging as a service or charging infrastructure and energy as the energy. But it's really important in each of these to know that these third-party operators of these deals, they don't walk away once the infrastructure is in the ground, right? And like a normal contractor, they're involved in the day-to-day operation because they own this infrastructure, they own these assets, and they want to make sure that they are providing an operational level of service that is meeting the KPIs, key performance indicators of these deals. So in other words, if things like vehicle uptime, charger availability, these are all spelled out in these as a service agreements. And if the providers don't meet those, then the customer gets a discount or doesn't have to pay. So there's really a mutual benefit to not only entering into one of these agreements, but also the performance that you receive as part of them.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for spelling that out for us. And it's really good to know that there are different options that are available out there depending on what your needs are. And speaking of needs, can you talk a little bit to the types of EV charging the as a service model works best for? Like, for example, does it pertain to all types of EV charging, or is there like a specific application that it tends to work better for?
Yeah, so because of the transactional nature, and we'll get into more of that in a little while, it does, as a service agreements, tend to work best with fleets of vehicles or situations that have predictable usage, high mileage, and/or high charging needs. Things like municipal fleets, bus or school bus fleets, all of those things are really set up nicely for an as a service agreement. Where we've seen mixed results or it's sometimes hard to make one of these deals work is in, if it was just a few public facing chargers that might not be the best application of as a service because nobody really knows how regularly those chargers are going to be used. And so, it's about putting a deal together that makes sense for both the agency and the operator. They need to know that there's enough kilowatt hours or vehicles or operation to make sure that investment is worth their while.
Awesome. Yeah. So there are, and even in my experience with working with public agencies, there are a lot of reasons why they might feel a little bit more secure, right, in owning their own charging infrastructure and their EV fleet. So can you kind of take us through some reasons why they might not want to own everything?
Yeah, no, I mean, that is the traditional public agency model, is to own everything, right? Own and operate everything. And then there's a known in that. However, there's really two main things that drive why they may not want to own their assets, their EV charging assets, either the infrastructure, the vehicles, or even the operation. And that really comes down to both funding and risk. If you pull up the next graphic here, I put together some really rough numbers, but numbers that we've started to see in the industry as we get further down into these deals. EV infrastructure, it does have a significant upfront cost. The vehicles themselves, the EV vehicles, cost more than their internal combustion counterparts, and the infrastructure, to a great degree, doesn't exist yet, so you have to install it. So this cost comparison example I put together here is really for EV charging for 8 school buses with the infrastructure to support 8 more buses in the future, and then procurement of those buses. So there's a lot of numbers here. We'll send out these slides later for you to look at and think through. But really, if you look at the infrastructure costs and the parking lot costs and the ADA and the charging equipment and then the labor to use to install all the conduit and trenching and everything like that, plus the annual networking fees and electricity costs, plus the school buses themselves, you start to look at a fairly sizable chunk of cash that is needed to make this project a reality. Over $800,000 in infrastructure alone, $2.4 million for the school buses that you're procuring, and then an ongoing $25,000 in annual fees. So as public agencies are known to do, that cash may not exist, and so it's not necessarily a choice of do I do this or this. It's if I don't have the cash, I can't make this project a reality. So really, this is where as a service comes in, and you look at trading a lot of those capital expenditures for operational expenditures through this as a service model. And let's say we did energy as a service here without cost, right? That would come out to be about $12,500 per charger per year, which is over the 8 chargers, $100,000 per year. But that's for 15 years or so. But that includes the electricity. That includes the charger O&M and the equipment replacement if those chargers break. The vendor wants to keep those chargers up and operating, and most likely they're required to as part of their KPIs in the agreement. It includes charge management, making sure the vehicles are charging at the right time. And it also captures utility rebates and incentives that are associated with the vehicles and the infrastructure that's there. And then if you extend that a little more to include the buses themselves, the as a service agreement, it comes out to about $45,000 per vehicle per year, or $360,000 a year. Again, that's a 15-year term, but that includes everything. That's basically no cash up front. I'll write you a check for $360,000 a year for the next 15 years, but that includes electricity. That includes your charger O&M and your equipment replacement. That includes your vehicle O&M. They're incentivized to keep those vehicles running at a certain level and have them ready. That includes replacement parts for the vehicles, like batteries when they wear out. And that includes, again, charge management and any applicable rebates. So the graph on the right kind of lays all those different cost scenarios out, with the standard purchase being the blue line that starts higher, but it ends up lower. The green line is the energy as a service, assuming the agency were to buy the buses themselves. And then the orange line is indeed energy as a service, including buses, for no cash up front, but indeed escalating at a higher rate than than the other two. And really the difference in cost and the thing, which is the second point here, is what is the public agencies have to ask themselves, what is the risk associated with operating these fleets worth to me, right? Is it worth the difference between the different scenarios? Public agencies, they have a day job, right? They're running a city, they're educating students. They're not always staffed to properly manage a fleet of electric vehicles, from answering questions like what infrastructure do I install? What vehicles do I install? How do I properly charge them in the most cost-effective way? Plus, technology is rapidly changing. And a great way to hedge against product obsolescence on either the vehicles or the chargers is to make someone else own the vehicles and the infrastructure, right? If it's someone else's problem, you don't have to worry about the vehicles switching to a Tesla plug and whether you have, in 5 years, you're going to have the right plug for your vehicle. That's someone else's problem. These as a service providers are incentivized to optimize operation, and they can swap out products as they see fit to best meet your operational needs. So questions like what vehicle do I choose, which will meet my range requirements, or what EV plug standard do I choose, or when do I charge my vehicle? These are all automatically answered. So it does de-risk, these kind of arrangements do de-risk these scenarios for public agencies. And that has real value in it.
Yeah. So there are definitely a lot of different moving parts and things to consider. So in my brain, it makes sense why a public agency maybe wouldn't want to take on all of that risk, right? So, but I'll go ahead and kind of address the elephant in the room, if you will. Can you explain why a private company might want to do so?
Yeah. And we go back to day jobs, and this is the private entity's day job, right? They found ways to make a business out of optimizing operation of a fleet of EVs. If you go to the next slide here, this kind of shows the revenue associated with one of these deals, right? The more that's lumped into one of these as a service deals, the more chances there are for private companies to tap into that revenue, incentives, rebates, tax credits, carbon credits. This graphic really shows, the cash in is those three things we mentioned: the vehicles, the infrastructure, and the O&M. Those are investments that they're prepared to make in exchange for the revenue from other people's money. They have whole departments that are set up to collect tax credits, utility rebates. Just like the solar industry, where they set up a department to deal with utilities and make sure that they're submitting the right paperwork on time to qualify for the incentive. These as a service providers are doing the same thing. Plus, having a concentration of battery power allows them to explore grid services, things like vehicle to grid, things like virtual power plants, generating the resiliency for the communities they serve, participating in demand response programs, doing other things like operational savings, things like charging you 15 cents a kilowatt hour, which is still less than what the agencies would be paying in diesel fuel for their vehicles, but they're generating it at 4 cents or 8 cents, or maybe for free given the on-site solar. So all things like that just help generate revenue from these deals. And then environmental credits, carbon credits, RECs, LCFS. They can take the value of those that help drive down the overall upfront cost of purchasing these. And then, just like a PPA where there's regular revenue coming in, there is a required payment per vehicle or per kilowatt hour or per mile driven. And so, their investors love having these regular revenue streams that come in, and will invest capital in these green energy projects that make them worthwhile for everybody to participate.
So that sounds pretty complicated, Steve. And how would a public agency write such a procurement?
Well, it can be complicated, but luckily there are firms like ourselves, like Answer Advisory, that have experience helping public agencies write these as a service procurement. However, another option, we have recently partnered with the SPUR, the Joint Procurement Agency SPUR. They have something called the PAVE program, which really is going to provide, later this summer, will provide a statewide piggybackable procurement contract which has competitively procured different turnkey EV installers who will work with any public agency, education or municipal within California to help design these EV charging solutions, including looking at these as a service models, install and maintain these solutions for years to come. So there's lots of resources. There's people who have gone before to do this. There are folks to help you like ourselves, and there's a statewide procurement that helps public agencies jump through or bypass the procurement headaches with a competitively bid piggybackable contract that folks can use. So lots of options, and happy to answer any follow-up questions that may come after this presentation, or more information on the SPUR program. Again, it should be available later this summer. We'll definitely send links when we have the vendors selected, but it will handle all of this.
That really sounds exciting. And thank you so much, Steve, again, for being with us. And thank you for taking a lot of pretty complicated concepts and translating them into English for us. So we appreciate that and appreciate you being here.
No, right. I love doing this. It's fun.
Yeah. We definitely try to make Fast Chat fun. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just wrap us up here then. And I just want to let everyone know that if you missed us this morning for any reason at all, please just know all of our Funded Fast Chats are recorded and they can be found by going directly to our website. Our website is sjvceo.com. Once again, that's sjvceo.com. You can also access our all of our webisodes by going directly to our YouTube page. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Look out for our follow-up email later on today. I know I mentioned this. We both kind of mentioned this a few times during the presentation. That email is going to have a lot of really good stuff in it. So be sure to be on the lookout for it. It will contain a link to the recording of this Funded Fast Chat. So you don't have to go clicking around to find us. That email will also include links to all of the important resources that we talked about during the presentation. So thank you so much again for being with us, and we hope everyone stays safe and stay cool in this heat. Until we see you next time, have an awesome week. Thank you.
Bye.